You're listening to Bring Me the Axe. I'm Brian White, one half of this morbid equation, and I'm joined by my co-host, brother Dave. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Thank you for asking. I am doing all right. It is stew season. Pretty excited about stew season. I'm kicking it off officially today. Well, yesterday.
Is it like a sort of escalation of stews to a particular point? Do you start simple, like with a beef stew?
I think I like to just mix it up. Just
make your way to a bisque.
Like here a stew, there a stew. You know, that kind of thing. Like just adding it into the rotation, you might say.
Okay.
I made a chicken stew.
All right.
Pretty good.
All right.
I overdid it on the dill a little bit though.
Dill chicken stew. I like a beef stew with a little red pepper flake. That's what was that face?
Oh, no, that was for the beer.
Oh. I thought you were objecting to my use of red pepper flakes in a beef stew.
You fucking savage. No. This is a photo aged IPA, and I was not expecting the foderity of it all.
Well, it's an IPA. It sneaks up on you.
Came at me.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling it. You know, we're on the edge of we're like around the edge of the holiday season. And so certain food comes into play, you know?
We got the Christmas decorations up and shit.
Oh yeah?
Well, you know, we've suffered so much this month. And
why not be merry?
You just gotta force it. You know, speaking of which, everybody who is going to holiday functions, because we are on the verge of Thanksgiving, and some people don't get to go celebrate Thanksgiving with normal people. They have to endure right-wing antagonists. I have just a little PSA for everybody. Don't fucking go. You don't have to go.
Yeah?
Just skip it.
Just stay home. Have a me evening.
Yeah, make some fucking stew. Watch Hallmark, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, watch horror movies. Watch honestly, Blood Rage.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of time off as adults, and you shouldn't spend yours with shitty conservatives. So,
true.
Or alternatively, you could go and yell in their faces.
You can also do that. I encourage that actually. Like, just make a scene.
Yeah, some people though, they're like, this is just too much. I don't want to have to do this. You don't have to.
You don't have to do that. But I mean, if you got it in you,
do it.
Cause a scene. Cause a proper scene.
They'll be like, oh, what's your pronouns? I'm like, my pronouns about to punch you in your fucking mouth, Steve.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. All right, yeah. So we practically grew up in neighborhood video stores, and the steady diet of utter garbage that those shops provided us with continues unabated to this day. There's no one else I enjoy chopping it up with about trashy movies more than Dave. And just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. You want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Queer Wolf. Mm-hmm. I encourage you to follow us. It's fun. You know, we got a lot of content.
Yeah.
You know, we kicking it out constantly.
Yeah. Content creators
properly. Yeah. I'm also on TikTok. You know, going back to that Instagram thing, like we were really hesitant to get involved in Instagram. Look at us now.
Well, you gotta lure them in, you know.
You gotta tantalize them. Give them a little something. Give them a little something to come in with. A little bait.
Also, you got algorithms and everything, and you know you gotta make shit. Otherwise they deprioritize you. I don't understand how the internet works, but I just make it up.
Yeah. I'm also on TikTok. If you do that sort of thing, just doing dancy pants stuff.
Pas de pliés and I'm
arabesques.
I'm really reaching right now.
I've got a really good arabesque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Put a little red pepper in it. Yeah, food jokes.
Get ready. If you don't know, we have another show called 99 Cent Rental where we cover all manner of video store madness on the weeks that Bring Me the Axes off. Our latest episode covering the Beaver trilogy is out now. And God damn it, I know that it's a tall order to ask a person to sit down and listen to 2.5 hours of a podcast about a movie they've probably never heard of.
And we'll probably never see.
And we'll have a really hard time catching up with it. But goddamn, I think that's like one of our best episodes ever.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think people should listen to it. I think people should go see the movie too.
Yeah. It's a hell of a movie. I got my copy finally came in. I got it from Trent Harris himself. It's signed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. He doesn't want to get it into distribution or ever talk about it, but goddamn it, he'll sign it.
He'll write his name on it.
He's really ambivalent about fame, I think.
That whole movie is kind of about his journey and ordeal with fame.
That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back next week, kicking off the holiday series proper with a look at the utterly weird Canadian children's movie, The Christmas Martian. If you remember way back in the mists of time when we did the peanut butter solution, this is by the same people.
Yep. And it is somehow stranger but more charming, and you'll watch it and think, how was life ever like this?
I know. Yep. So yeah, you can also contact us directly at bringmetheaxpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a movie that you love, would like to hear us give it the business. We've got a couple of requests from listeners so far, and we're going to try to get them on that schedule. Also, if you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can look us up over there at patreon.com/bringmetheaxpod. Couple of tiers you can join there. Subscribers at the $5 a month tier can look forward to our bi-weekly X-Files Reach-Watch pod, Do You Think I'm Spooky? As well as my bi-weekly DJ show, Radio Free Haddonfield, which I have gotten a lot more like very positive feedback on than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting that one to be the one that nobody listened to.
Mm-hmm.
It's surprising. It's nice. Once again, patreon.com/bringmetheaxpod.
We have merch too. We got merch.
That's right.
Bonfire.com. I can't fucking remember. Shit. Look, it'll be in the bit. Put it in the notes. You can put it. I'll put it in the notes.
It's always in the notes. It's in the notes for every episode. So you can link right it. You know, with the holidays coming up, get your loved ones a hoodie or a T-shirt from your favorite podcast.
Yep.
We got Bring Me the Axe shirts. We got 99-cent rental shirts. Mm-hmm. They're nice. Yeah. They're really good. Yeah. So yeah. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name. Subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor. Give the episode a like. Leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. I've gotten some really nice notes this week. Really, in the last couple of weeks from listeners. It's validating. It's very nice to hear from you guys. I'm glad that this really kind of hits the spot for you.
Yeah, and hey, if you don't know what to write, you just give us 5 stars and then just give us your favorite stew recipe.
That would be welcome. I always welcome recipes.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. It's a great idea. Yep. Just want to get that all out of the way right at the top of the show because we're going to give you a taste, of the sexiness.
And it's a real sexy film.
A real sexy movie we're talking about tonight. Here we go.
Silly tales about ghouls chased away by garlic and vampires shrinking from crosses.
She kidnapped young girls and kept them chained to give blood. Blood for her to bathe in and drink.
And she bit them everywhere.
No. And then she pushed white-hot pokers into their faces. And when they parted their lips to scream, she shoved the flaming rod up into their mouths.
Stop it. Blood. Beautiful red. Stop it! Her hands, and her arms, and her legs. Stop it. Don't worry, you're safe with me.
I killed no one.
Again.
It's difficult to forget.
Ah, you will. After a while, it'll only be the remembrance of a bad dream. And then the remains of a remembrance. More and more faint in your mind. I have seen many a night fall away into an even more endless night.
Nights like last night.
Who do you think I am? A kind of ghoul? A vampire? Oh, no, my dear. So many nights, tumbling and tumbling away into the abyss of time. Faster, my love, faster.
If you think These ladies are something. Wait until you meet Mother. She's something else.
Ooh, it's Daughters of Darkness.
It's also the most European thing I've ever seen in my life.
It is. Oh man, it is potently European in a
Yeah.
way that's really really hard to shake.
Yeah.
Hell of a movie, man. I've been looking forward to this one for a while because I find like I don't think I'd ever really seen it until last year, or maybe even like before that when I started writing about, because I wrote an article about it, like fucking 3,000 words on the sort of gender dynamics of this movie. And I immediately fucking fell in love with it because it is such a fucking art movie, but it's also really sleazy and trashy.
Oh yeah.
And it is full of crazy performances.
Yeah, I went through a period maybe like 15 years ago or so where I was like burning through a lot of the Hammer movies, and this isn't a Hammer movie, but it's Hammer adjacent in a way.
It's a direct. I believe it is actually a direct result of the
Yes.
Vampire Lovers.
Yep. And so I watched it then, and I had forgotten most of it, pretty much all of it, until watching it this time. And it's a head scratcher. I like it. It's a little homophobic. It misunderstands a lot of things about feminism, I think, but it is beautifully shot, and it has got some stunning performances in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Let's see. So this was a period that was happening where the sort of lesbian vampire trope was coming up. And in 1971, it came up very aggressively, and I'm not really sure why. I can't really put a finger on it. Because prior to 1968, you get bits, and you get like little glimmers of it here and there, like Dracula's Daughter, I think, is 1936. There's
That's very heavy, like euphemism and like.
Oh yeah, that's like extremely chaste, but it's present.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah, it's a hell of a movie. But like all of a sudden, Jean Rollin makes this movie in 1968 called Rape of the Vampire that isn't quite there, and it's not really exactly what he eventually kind of becomes known for, but he is really kind of like the master of this entire trope. Like so many of his movies are about this, that also his movies are very small scale. They become available to the sort of wider public after a very long kind of dormant period. Like I think really he sort of surged back to the fore with I'm trying to remember what the name of that video company was, but they released a shitload of his movies about the same time they were also releasing a lot of Jess Franco's movies. Redemption, I think, is what the name of that company was. But yeah, and I don't really know. But all of a sudden, 1971 hits, and we get Vampiros Lesbos comes out that year. That's the Jess Franco movie that is really loosey-goosey with vampire mythology, where it's like central vampire actually spends a good deal of time tanning.
Yeah, Jess Franco didn't really care about details, you might say.
I was going to say, if he was
or
really
dialogue, for that matter.
He got real casual with it. If, vampire lore stood in the way of his desire to like film Soledad Miranda in a bikini. Yeah. The year prior to this movie, we also, like I said, we got the Vampire Lovers, which I think was really the first time people were like, oh shit, this is a real winning combination. But also same year, shit, I've got a note.
We got another Ingrid Pitt movie too. There's like not a sequel, but like right after Vampire Lovers, she's in another one that's like they kind of pitched it almost as a spiritual sequel. It might have even been the same year.
Yeah. Oh, Requiem for a Vampire was also released in 71, which is kind of Jean Rollin's proper entry into the like lesbian vampire thing. And I have, again, no idea why it was so powerfully paired up, but I mean, it just all of a sudden from there, it kind of sprouts and flowers into this like much larger thing. I suppose we'll get into it, but yeah.
My theory is that Rosemary's Baby showed that edgy shit could be profitable.
Okay.
And at the same time, you're getting sexual liberation, you're getting the women's movement, and you're getting sort of feminism on the rise. And I think all of that in more permissive cultures like France and England to a much lesser extent, you get stuff like this. And then the US market probably tried to cash in on it by either getting edited versions, like AIP released a lot of this stuff in the US. They probably like had some edited versions of it. So that's my guess, is that Rosemary's Baby really kind of kicked it off, and they were like, we can push the boundaries a little bit more.
Okay, yeah.
And lesbianism has always been more acceptable on film in general.
Yeah. And I suppose we're going to talk about that a little bit.
We're definitely going to talk about that.
Because let's see, lesbians are definitely approached differently than gay men are.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah. Let's do the facts. Yeah. We.
Oh.
The
Apologies to all the French people who are listening. Oh, none of them.
Yeah, I love your laugh. So 1971 is the year of our Lord. And so here are some other movies that released that year. Vampiros Lesbos, as I mentioned. Requiem for a Vampire, also released that year. But also, The Abominable Dr. Phibes was released in 1971.
Love that movie.
And that's probably my favorite of the Vincent Price movies.
Ooh.
Yep.
British people were killing it in the late 60s, early 70s. British horror, fucking nailing it.
That one in particular is so fucking weird.
Because then he goes on to he does Madhouse, which is one of my favorites. He does Theater of Blood, which is my favorite.
Oh, so good. Yeah. I mean, they just knew what to do with him. That's so great. Dario Argento dropped Cat of Nine Tails that year. The Cat of Nine Tails. And Ken Russell's The Devils came out in 1971.
God, that movie upsets me so much.
Gee, why, I wonder? Oh, that's a hell of a movie, man. So our cast and crew, this movie is directed by a guy named Harry Kumel. He's Belgian, not terribly prolific, but by 1971, he'd made a ton of arty short films. This is one of his first features, and a lot of it came together with the help of his friends and contemporaries, Hélène René, Joseph von Sternberg, and Orson Welles.
Older. Because like von Sternberg was making shit in like the 40s and 30s.
Oh yeah.
And so was Orson Welles, for that matter.
Was, I guess, he was like friends and sort of like a mentee to particularly von Sternberg.
See, that makes a lot of sense though, because von Sternberg made a shitload of movies with Marlene Dietrich, and you can tell the Marlene Dietrich, at least the aesthetic, is very much alive in this one.
Right. And Alan René was I believe he was dating Delphine Seyrig at the time, and so he was sort of the connective tissue that kind of got her into this as well. Orson Welles, no idea how he sort of factors into it, but they were tight.
You're like Orson Welles now.
I knew it. I knew it was coming up. Simmer down. He and his producer friend, Pierre Drouot, set out to make a trashy vampire movie in the style of Hammer's The Vampire Lovers, but they wanted to do it through the lens of the French New Wave. I'd say mission accomplished with this one. Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah, because it definitely has all of the beats and moves of a Hammer movie, but it definitely looks like a movie that was made in France at the time.
What if Truffaut was far less talented and made a Hammer horror movie?
I was gonna say Truffaut for sure. Yeah. But yeah, apart from this, he made a movie called Malpertuis, which I've watched, and I don't remember a goddamn thing about it. Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like a big part of the problem with I think talking about this episode is there's not really a whole lot to know about this, and most of the people involved in its production I mean, obviously worked and went on to do other stuff, but it was like shit that just kind of falls outside of the purview of this podcast and is just, I mean, I would say even in France and Belgium, these guys are niche.
Yeah.
So,
and also, I think one gets the feeling watching this that the ways in which it is successful have nothing to do with Harry Kumel. Like, he's an adequate director. He does a fine job, but I don't think the successes of this film can be attributed to him.
No. I would say the successes of this film lay primarily on Delphine Seyrig.
Yeah, and the cinematographer, Edouard van der and something.
Sure. It was a good try.
Yeah, well, hey,
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to try some accents later on, so it'll balance out.
Also, François de Roubaud. Roubaud? I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's the composer, and this fucking score is
man,
awesome.
the music of this movie is so good. It is so good. You hear it in that trailer that we ran. Like, that's just a piece of it. Like, so much of this movie is scored beautifully.
Yeah.
It really stays with you.
He did the score for Les Samurai, which is also really, really good.
Kick-ass movie, yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of Delphine Seyrig, she was the art film actress. Sort of like how Godard found a muse in Anna Karina, like Renee had Delphine Seyrig. And she made a real impression sort of on the world of like art film and sort of film in general, internationally, in a really, really weird movie called Last Year at Marienbad. You gotta see it. It's a fucking fascinating movie. It's super cool as well. And she's great in that one as well. But man, like, she makes an impression in this movie.
She is mesmerizing to watch.
Yeah. In such a way that, like, I mean, everything that they did, like, they knew what they had with her, and they dress her up in ways that make it just like impossible not to look at her. Like, there's one point where she's wearing this like shiny silver dress.
My note is just like, holy shit, that dress.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I mean, apart from this, she worked in real high and mighty French art filmmakers like not Louis Buñuel, but Francois Truffaut, Marguerite Duras as well.
Well, she was in a Buñuel movie.
Huh?
She was in a Buñuel movie.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, he's not French.
He's not French.
He's a Spanish director. She originally did not want to do this movie. Like, she saw the script and was like, no thanks, it looks trashy.
Mm-hmm. And, it is.
Yeah. Her boo talked her into it. Man, I'm glad he did, because this movie is a goddamn buffet.
She also directed a short film based on Scum Manifesto, the Valerie Solanas book. Yeah.
No idea. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think she's a bit of a hit with lesbians, is my understanding. For obvious reasons, she is a stunning woman.
Yeah, oh yeah, she's a very interesting person. I definitely recommend like looking her up. We've also got John Carlin, of Dark Shadows fame.
Willie Loomis.
Yep. Who? Wait, what's his name?
Willie Loomis on Dark Shadows. He's Willie.
Oh, that's right.
The I guess charming rapist on the show.
you love him. He's just out there doing his thing.
It's a real redemption arc right there for him. He was also on Cagney and Lacey. He was one of their husbands.
I was going to say, if you don't know him from Dark Shadows, you know him as Mr. Lacey.
I believe so.
From Cagney and Lacey. And if you don't know Cagney and Lacey, I don't know what to tell you.
You don't know who he is then, because that's about all. He did a lot of TV in the 70s.
He did a ton of TV, but just like guest spots and shit.
Yeah, he's on like a couple episodes of Quincy M.E., which is a show I very much love. Because I'm 70 years old.
You got the soul. You got an old soul. That's what you got. Yeah. Apparently, at one point, director Kumel and his star Danielle Ouimet were arguing, and Kumel slapped her during an argument, and so Carlin was so upset by this that he went up and he punched him in the face.
I'm okay with that.
I'm pretty okay with that. Won't lie. Yeah.
Hey,
and then, like,
French people and Belgian people, well, she's not French, she's Canadian, but
yeah. So yeah, they're kind of the central players in this, because we've also got Andrea Rao and Danielle Ouimet as the sort of other women in this movie. I would say Danielle Ouimet's character Valerie is central to the plot, but unfortunately, like everybody else who's sort of involved with this movie, like she's still working, but like nothing that anybody's really seen outside of like France or Quebec, because that's where she's from.
Yeah. She strikes me as someone who was probably cast more for her look than for her acting skills. I mean, she's fine. She's
fine.
She's a fine job. She's, the character doesn't have much to say. She's just sort of like supposed to look at like this kind of doe-eyed ingenue type of thing. And she does that very well. She looks like she was probably a model at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what Andrea Rau's deal was.
Yeah,
also. Like,
that is also
actress,
apparent.
But she did a lot more like modeling. And you can tell she looks like a fucking European model.
And she does it all. She's another one that doesn't have a lot of lines.
Right. I would say the Valerie character is really more symbolic. She's sort of the stand-in for femininity in this, and that everybody kind of is struggling over. So yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot to say or to do, while everybody else is kind of fighting around her. But she's still great.
Exploding at a 12.
Yeah. This movie is also known as, and this is one of those movies that was like sold in foreign markets under different titles and like drastically different cuts. I fucking love it. This was known in Belgium as the Red Lips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Les Lèvres Rouges. And then in France it was known as the Red on the Lips.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's a subtle difference. In Norway, however, it was known as Dorst naar bloed, which means thirst for blood.
No, okay, getting closer.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course, Daughters of Darkness.
It was also Children of the Night.
Ooh,
yeah, that's the Canadian edit. And there was another. I can't remember where it was, but it's House of Shame. Ooh. I feel like that one's pretty much on the nose.
God damn. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of goes back to the trailer that we watched where they were like, wait till you meet Mother. She's something else or something like that. And I was like, Mother?
Well, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah, but like Mother is in the movie. Mother looms largely over the first half of the movie and then appears for about 2 minutes.
For reasons that I still do not understand.
Don't get it.
It is very unclear. This movie wields homosexuality in the strangest way that I get the feeling that even the people making it didn't quite know why they were doing it, other than it felt like they should.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of, like I did a lot of reading on this, and I've seen a lot of far more sort of analysis that kind of take this in a class struggle direction than a kind of feminist direction.
Oh, this is not a feminist movie. This is an anti-feminist movie, if anything.
I think that they intended it to be.
Exactly. That's the problem. That's why it becomes an anti-feminist movie.
Yeah. I think that there is a worthwhile discussion about the movie's or at least attempts at feminism. But yeah, this movie is kind of like symbolically, its message is kind of all over the place.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, why is this in there? Who knows? Very beautiful.
I know. There's an entire character who seems like he's kind of leading to something, like he might be the sort of like vampire hunter character.
And he's a great character, but that's it. He's just sort of
and then they run him over with a car. And that's it. And I'm like, what? Because he never comes back. Yeah. So there were taglines for this too. A couple of them were really good. There's this one. The ice cold terror of death. Yeah, I like that one. And then there's this one. An erotic nightmare of vampire lust.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. That's my lead in. I tried to look up as much as I could about the sort of the production of this movie. Even the extras on that Blue Underground disc, not terribly illuminating, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just sort of seems like it was a movie. It came out, it did pretty well, and then it went away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it leaves an impression for sure. Like, it's a movie that I enjoy watching quite a bit because it's such a cool movie to look at.
I think it probably, because it did do well with critics.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, critics, it was very well reviewed. I think some of that was maybe American critics a little bit in awe of an arty horror movie.
Okay.
I don't know about like staying power. I know that recently it's sort of been maybe one of the more rediscovered ones, but it does try to do the Hammer horror thing, but it does it in like almost in, I don't want to say quite like Ganja and Hess, but it's abstract in a lot of ways where it's like, I can see it not kind of taking off with the average horror viewer.
Right.
Because it's slow.
It is. And I think it's going to be kind of a hard movie to talk about. It's going to be kind of like when we did Ganja and Hess, because it's not an action-packed movie. There's no big, like, vampire killer scene in the way that, like, a lot of Hammer movies have. There's just
no monster either.
There's not really. Yeah, there's no fangs. It's
there's a punch bowl.
There's a punch bowl. You have to kind of take them at their word that this is a vampire movie, but you know, and that the other thing is it's a lot of talking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we're going to basically be talking about people talking.
There's a lot of building of tension.
Yes.
To almost to no end.
Yeah, it does. It just kind of escalates.
Like it doesn't have an explosive ending. It does. It does sort of. It culminates.
I mean, it does
in
have
big,
a literally explosive ending.
That is true. It has sort of occasional big set pieces, but even those are still very kind of staid in a way.
Yeah, because these were not filmmakers who were accustomed to doing big spectacles.
Yeah, and so that's why I wonder, like, why does this not come up at the same time as, like, say, Count Yorga or like Dracula AD, like, you know, those titles.
Oh, sure, yeah. I think a lot of them. Well, I mean, in those cases in particular, those are really groovy.
Oh
movies.
yeah, they are.
You know, they got that. This. It's groovy in the way that it kind of, you know, in that it's really European, but it kind of lacks the sort of modish.
Nobody's swinging anything in this.
Yeah, there's no band playing like a hit song. You know, there's no dancing.
That's what I would have wanted.
I wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, shall we talk about this movie here?
Yeah, unless you want to hear some of these reviews.
I would like to hear some of these reviews. Actually,
all right. I hit you with this one because I thought this one was kind of great. Like a poisoned flower, the homosexuality wafts through the main premises, a huge coastal hotel off-season, housing a honeymoon couple, 2 strange women, and a quaking porter. That is the setup, and we guarantee that the picture, gliding silently into horror, will glue you to your seat.
Who wrote that? That is
Howard
amazing.
Thompson, New York Times.
New York Times. Howard Thompson, hell of a job.
Let's see.
Because it really does nab the vibe of the movie where it's just kind of like drifting on air the whole time. And there's definitely a lot of like billowing, like drapes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like
everyone's
really
breathing heavily on everyone else's neck. Daughters of Darkness is an ultra-sophisticated, utterly daring triumph of style and mood. Ineffably poignant and ever verging on camp, but too confident and knowing to lapse into it. It is quite flatly one of the most elegant horror movies ever made. Easy now, Kevin Thomas.
Jesus,
pull back the reins a little bit.
I'm gonna say, yeah, like let's pump the brakes. Like let's take it down a notch. Because as much as I enjoy this movie, that dude's getting a little carried away.
Yeah. But not everybody loved it.
Oh.
The film is a pretty glum business in which 2 lesbian vampires go to work on a couple of newlywed straights in a seaside hotel off-season in Ostend, Belgium. That is the Philadelphia Inquirer. He didn't much care for it. There were actually people who did not like it, predominantly because of the overt homosexuality.
Crazy.
I mean, really, it's 1971.
That shouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, People are going to be weird about like queerness in movies, period, particularly in 1971. They're going to be really weird about gay women in 1971.
And it's, again, I think maybe it was a little bit more permissible because it's European.
Oh, sure. Like, oh, yeah, they all be like that out in
Yeah,
France.
like, you know how French people are.
Yeah.
Well, it's Belgium, you fuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's like walking distance to France.
Yes.
So, all right, here we go.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about
open.
Oh, we're diving right in. You don't want to talk about the feminism.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I was going to kind of blend it in a little bit, but
Now we
'Cause,
can weave it in.
This is a movie that sort of builds on it. We got to introduce our characters. We got to kind of establish the kind of masculine struggle, because really the way that this movie opens is very, very strongly in that way. Because what ends up happening is we start up, we open on a train at dusk, hurtling through Belgium, presumably.
To
and then
a really killer score.
Yes, yeah. I mean, at no point does the music in this movie let up. It is dynamite to the end. In a sleeping car cast in purple light, a couple, recently married, having sex in extreme close-up.
Mm-hmm.
This is Stefan and Valerie, our, for lack of a better term, protagonists.
Yeah.
Now, there's the thing that I'm gonna try to kind of fill in the blanks here, because again, extremely visual movie. And what's happening here is they're not just having sex. It is him kind of desperately, very aggressively like pawing her.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a tremendous amount of emphasis on her breasts. It really kind of feels more like a struggle than anything else. And there's a ton of shots of hands in this movie. Hands are this like crazy symbol that, you know, as we go on, I'll kind of address it. But yeah, like we're going to learn here when they're done that they have this weird conversation about whether or not he loves her. And up to this point, like throughout, we're not going to really learn much about either of these people. We're certainly not going to learn anything about Valerie. She is a blank slate for better or for worse.
There's there's some inference here and there that can be made. Like he meets her and marries her in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, yeah.
So I don't know if she's supposed to be Swiss, like Swiss by way of Montreal, maybe, but
no, she is. I think she is intended to be. She's like a Swiss lady.
Okay.
And what we learned, kind of like right off the bat, is they met there. They have this kind of like Vegas style wedding where they more or less kind of elope, but neither of them really knows the other one.
Right. They just met.
They just met for all intents and purposes.
And they do something really kind of neat here where the opening scene with them having sex, it's sort of in this like red, black, and blue lighting that just, they're on a train, so it's shifting as the train moves. And then all of a sudden they turn the lights on, and it is this stark change that is very jarring, and it like throws them literally into a different light where you're like, ah.
Right, because as they're leading up to this, as we're sort of cast in purple, like we see the bouquet and like all this kind of like wedding related stuff, but it's kind of hard to tell what it is in this light, and then they turn that light on very suddenly and they cut to a shot of that same table with the stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, this is like wedding shit.
Yeah, and it's all it's a very jarring moment to be like yanked out of that very intimate filming, because they are right up on both of them.
Yeah,
and then like all of a sudden you're in this like really bright light that's kind of ugly.
Right, yeah, and again, very symbolic. Like they're pulling us out of this sort of crazy thing, the scene that's kind of like, hey, this is what you came to see, right? And then they're just being like, well, here's these people, and we're gonna stay right on top of them, mostly because they're shooting in a sleeping car on a train, and there's not a whole lot of space, but also like functionally, symbolically, being all up on these people, from that perspective. Does a lot, like goes a long way to sort of like kind of thrust you into these people's world, so that you kind of are on the same level as them, as about as much about them as they know about each other, really. Mm-hmm. And God damn it, she is in for a fucking surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when this train stops mid-journey, Stefan goes to see what the problem is. When he returns, we learn that a train up the way a bit derailed, and they're stopped while the problem is fixed. They talk a bit, mostly about missing the boat to cross the channel to England, and he suggests that they get a room in Ostend, which is a coastal city in the middle of the Belgian coast. Valerie is concerned that they'll have to hold off on calling Stefan's mother and announcing their sudden wedding.
Yeah, he's real cagey about mother.
Yeah, he's gonna get like more and more intense and shitty about mother. But for right now, like, this is the first time we're gonna hear about her, and she's then going to loom very heavily over the proceedings until about halfway through the movie. But yeah, he just doesn't want to talk to mom.
Mm-mm.
Doesn't want to talk to mom. Yeah, so it's not just that they have to tell his mother about the wedding, but Valerie makes a strange remark about having to tell her what she is, and it's not clear in the moment what that is. There's some intimations here about class differences, but they keep it deliberately vague. Stefan tells her that mother insists...
Put a pin in that, because I've got a billion fucking questions that you probably don't have answers to.
Okay. I'm going to do my best. God damn it. So yeah, Stefan tells her that mother insists that they are different, some sort of gift from God. So hold all this in your head until the inevitable call home to mother. Because Stefan seems to be afraid of his mother, but promises Valerie that he'll call her when they get to Ostend. And so when they finally arrive, it's winter, and the city,
you skipped the part where he's feeding her fish at the table.
That's in the hotel.
Oh, is it in the hotel? Because my note literally says, "Don't feed her fish." It's just gross.
I know. Yes. God. Yeah. Again, it's him being gross. You know.
Yeah.
But also, yes, he's feeding her like nasty, slimy European fish.
Yeah. Fluke.
So when they arrive, it's winter, and the city, which is a coastal resort town, it is functionally dead. It's visibly cold and windy, and then they arrive at a massive and cavernous hotel, which is a stand-in for the sort of crumbling Gothic castle of more familiar vampire fare. They seem to be the only guests in the hotel, and they receive the key for the royal suite. So now the porter takes their bag, heads for their rooms, and Stefan follows after him and asks to make a call because she's badgering him like, aren't you going to call your mother? And he's like, yes, dear, right now.
Yeah, she's really fucking like into him telling, like, it's a little, I mean, when the reveal happens, it feels like such a contrivance because she's so pushing it so hard. You're like, bitch, calm down.
She wants to rip the Band-Aid off. Just get this over with. Because I think what we're kind of leading up to, what some of the remarks that they've made so far is, he's from some sort of like some kind of noble class, sort of aristocracy of sorts.
Yeah, we're gonna fall into so many fucking trope holes in this movie that like it's amazing that anyone got out of them.
Yeah. So Porter takes her bag, heads for the room. Stefan follows after him, asks to make a call, and then hands the porter a note, which is supposed to appear to have the phone number on it, but it actually says to say that there's no reply at the number as he hands him a 100-pound note to bribe him, which is a big ass note.
Yeah.
So yeah, in their room, the porter calls up to give them the message that Stefan passed to him, pretending that there's no reply, and he's like, "Oh shit, sorry."
Yeah, Willie's really selling it.
Yep. So now they have dinner in the empty restaurant.
And he feeds her fish. It's disgusting. Don't ever feed your lover fish.
Your lovers. Valerie tries to engage him on the topic of calling his mom again, but
it's like she's obsessed.
She is. I think she's worried. Like her whole thing is she's worried about what this person is going to think of her. So I think she just wants to get it out of the way or something. I really don't know. But she's like, why are you dodging this? And he's like, hey, don't worry about it, baby. And then like starts like basically deflecting, outright ignoring her in the conversation.
Like he is so obviously ignoring it and trying to change the subject that it's like, all right, yeah, she's getting real pushy, but he's getting a little suspicious pretty quickly.
Yeah. And then she's like insisting that he talks to her, and then he drops a fucking wild remark that mother hates her in spite of not even knowing that she exists, which is crazy.
Yeah, put a pin in that one too. We're coming back to that.
Yeah. So he promises, so his whole thing is like, I'm going to travel to England by myself tomorrow to see her and announce the wedding, and then he fucking dismisses it in the same breath by being like, or maybe the next day.
I mean, that's a lot to be like, well, you could make a call, or you could travel to England alone tomorrow. Like, that's going to take all day.
Yeah, it's probably like, I mean, like from
if
Austin,
the fucking channel is even done yet.
I was gonna say it's a boat trip across the channel from Ostend to England. Like, who knows where in England like they actually live?
Oh, swing in London, you know it.
Oh, it's got to be.
Or maybe Liverpool.
They actually show like Chateau. What the fuck is his name? They show the mansion that they live in, and it's this fucking horrible, like, barren wasteland where you just hear crows calling.
It's did you ever read the Late Breakfasters?
No.
It's a book about, like, it's sort of ostensibly a horror novel about vampires, but it's really an allegory about, like, the death of the British aristocracy, like the end of an era. And it essentially takes place in a house just like that, where it's like, it's mostly empty and it's just a bunch of old, like, wealthy people kind of puttering around and yelling at each other. That's what I was thinking.
That's great. That sounds awesome.
It's a good book.
Yeah, but, like, basically, we're establishing this sort of the tension between these two, where, you know, he is just kind of shitty towards this girl that he married.
Yeah, you might say he hates women.
You might say that. We're gonna get to a point where we realize he fucking hates women.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but now a red car races through the streets of Austin, and a young woman drives it, speaking to the unseen passenger. They seem to be looking for a good place to stay. When they stop at the hotel, the driver gets out, followed by the passenger, a beautiful woman in a black dress and a net veil, and her face is obscured mostly by shadow, but her eyes flash in the reflection. This shot is fucking incredible.
This shot of her getting out of the car, the whole movie could be just that shot, and I'd be totally happy.
It is unreal. Like,
she has, like, knee-high leather boots on.
The costume is incredible. Ladies, bring back the net veil, for fuck's sake.
And he wanted, Kumel wanted, like, to sort of evoke Nazi imagery with these colors and these sort of patterns and everything. So she wears a lot of leather in this. It's a lot of reds and blacks and yellows. Yeah. And
the color palette in this movie is deliberate, and it's red, it's black, it's gray. There's a lot of white as well. Like, it's.
Yeah. I mean, again, whoever did, like, this is a matter of costuming, and whoever did the costuming should have won an Oscar for this, because the outfits in this movie are absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. But just the fact that, like, when she gets out and you can see the light reflecting in her eyes, despite the fact that, like, the upper 2/3 of her face are covered in shadow, so cool. It's so fucking cool. Yeah. When she enters the hotel, we see her in full. The sight of her makes the porter nervous. He stammers and speaks to her, remembering that she stayed in the hotel, but it was like 40 years ago, and yet she hasn't aged a day.
And they do this like back and forth, kind of like he's indicating to her that he thinks something is up, and she's sort of like indicating to him that something is up, but it's never explicit.
She does this thing with her face constantly throughout it, because she definitely is like toying with everybody, and she has this like barely restrained smile.
But it is this painful, like the subtle building of dread in this moment within, I think his name is Pierre,
the porter,
and like just the way that they're really building, like, because he knows that she couldn't possibly be the same woman, except he also knows that she is the same woman, and she's kind of getting off on it. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's one of the
and she's going to do it again a bunch of times. And every time she does it, it's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, her name was, at the time when, like 40 years ago, it was the Countess Elizabeth Bathory. So, yeah, she toys with him, claiming that that's her name. But obviously they couldn't be the same person, right? It must have been her mother. To which he's like, okay, if you insist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the best part is he doesn't even try to hide this. Like, he basically, every person who walks, and there's not a lot of people, but every person who walks into that hotel, he's like, she's an old vampire. And they're just like, sure. Metaphorically, obviously.
Yeah, waving his arms. No, not a metaphor, a literal vampire.
Somebody do something quick.
So yeah, the porter announces that she can't have the royal suite because it's occupied by the newlyweds, directing her attention to them in the dining room. And he offers to kick them from the room, but she refuses, using his name, which to this point he has not offered to her. And she says that it won't be necessary and that the neighboring room will be fine. And now Bathory's companion, Ilona, enters, and Bathory directs her attention to them. Aren't they perfect?
And Ilona has like a full-on, like almost Twiggy like appearance, just darker, it's just darker features and darker hair, but she has that very fashionable.
Oh yeah. She's visibly younger. Her whole look. So if Bathory is supposed to be Marlene Dietrich. She's supposed to be Louise Brooks.
Okay.
Which is why she's got the hair like that. But I mean, Louise Brooks had like a real sharp cut. This is really more like a fucking Johnny Ramone bowl cut on a woman.
Yeah, personally, I found her hair irritating.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that there is a kind of androgyny to her.
Yeah. So Stefan approaches the porter, tells him that they'll be staying for the foreseeable future. Valerie asks who the blonde woman was, and he tells her Countess Bathory, which Stefan recognizes.
Yeah, he's like, "You're a vampire. She's a vampire. Hey, you guys, she's a vampire.
Yeah.
Get out of the hotel."
So in their room, Elizabeth reclines on the couch while Ilona watches Stefan and Valerie walking on the beach. They talk vaguely about going out tonight. Ilona needs to go out for some unspecified reason and with urgency. She won't be able to wait another night, to which Elizabeth replies, "Yes, you will, because I want you to," which has such a subtle kinkiness about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they talk about Valerie, specifically how beautiful she is. They couldn't give a fuck about Stefan. And then he's an American actor, right? John Carlin?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got such a European 70s actor look in this movie.
Yeah.
It's got to be the hair, like the hairstyle, and then like the cut that and mashed up with the fashion. But yeah,
I mean, if you picture him when he was on Cagney and Lacey, you're like, oh yeah, he's an American, all right. He's like quintessential.
He was also
American.
he was also quite a bit older on that show. So,
yes,
but yeah.
Because that is how time works.
Yeah, and then Elizabeth beckons Ilona to her like a mother, and Ilona goes to her, laying her head on her lap like a child. She wears a red kerchief around her neck, which she occasionally slips, which reveals like a red mark on her neck.
But it's not even like, it's not like you would imagine in a vampire movie. It looks more like a lipstick mark, because she's going to do it later on to someone else.
A little later on, there's a moment where Bathory kisses Valerie's hand, and she leaves a lipstick mark, and that's really. That's this movie's replacement for the fangs in the neck, like the bite mark. Yeah. And when the light hurts Elizabeth's eyes, Ilona throws her kerchief over it, casting the room in red.
Which is very cool.
It is very, very cool. In the morning, Stefan shaves while Valerie eats breakfast from a crowded tray on her lap in bed. He cuts himself while shaving, setting off a subtle panic reaction. He is again.
I would too. He doesn't just like nick himself. He like drags the blade down his neck.
Yeah, it's one of those like it's a straight razor. Yeah, and whenever I see people like shaving with those, it's like, ooh, god damn!
Why are you doing that?
Move and you are gonna slash your face up. Oh yeah, he's again putting off seeing his mother. She tries to read the Belgian paper. He pushes her to try and read it since she speaks German and it's similar to Flemish, I guess.
It also almost feels like he's trying to, because she keeps like kind of poking at him and there's a lot of like pestering of each other. There's a lot of like touching and petting and grabbing, and like she's like poking at him, and then she sees the cut, and it seems like he's trying to get her to focus on that so as not to focus on anything else that is him.
Right. Okay. So to my point about this, so his entire role, like by marrying this woman, he has sort of, he sees her kind of as something to be kind of like owned or mastered. And it's and the way that we combine this with the fact that he does not want to talk to his mother, it seems like he is trying to sort of like this shotgun wedding that he's carried out.
All right, I think we can't be ambiguous and cagey about it, because there's no way to talk about it without knowing what comes next.
Okay, so I'll just blow it, I suppose. It's about halfway into the movie, he does eventually call his mother, and it turns the whole movie on its head. He calls home, and mother is not a woman, or...
No.
She's just a...
It's a man.
It's a man.
In the 70s... You would never see this now, but it was not that uncommon for like older gay men to be referred to in that way. It's sort of like where you get the idea of drag mother. It's this idea of like, oh, mother darling, like that kind of thing, where it's like, it's an acknowledgement, I guess, of a kind of age and queeniness. Like, it's historically, it makes sense that they would do that.
Yeah.
But you would have to know in 71, you would have had to know that going into it. Otherwise, you wouldn't get that reference that like, this is a person who has lots of young lovers in the house. And sort of that's where you're getting this idea, this sort of like, oh, it's mother.
Yeah.
Come to mother, darling. It's that kind of thing.
Because like when we see him, he's like a foppish lord. Really?
It's a little bit offensive. I mean, he's got makeup on. Yes,
he's kind of like a character in an Oscar Wilde play.
I'll say it. He's very faggy, very faggy.
But yeah, so this is where it's all going, and so yeah, like I really do want to sort of address that. Also, not really much of a spoiler because it kind of builds and then it vanishes as the rest of the movie sort of takes over. But
you do get that feeling that he's trying to make some. He's trying to almost like by consuming her or mastering her, he can get over his homosexuality.
Yeah, he is trying to like mother. The whole thing that because when he does call her, and we'll talk about the conversation. It's very short. But the whole thing is, Mother seems to be kind of putting this idea in his head that, like, this is your destiny. Like, you will be like me because this is our sort of, like, this is our way. And he is basically experiencing, like, gay panic from this. And so he rushes into this, like, this wedding, this marriage with a woman, hoping to sort of, like, stave that off or, like, divert this kind of destiny.
And it's not even really destiny. I think the way that it comes across, at least to me, is that it's this guy who's just sort of being like, I get it. You need to do this. You need to kind of get this out of your system and go through it because you can't change this, but you still think maybe you can. So go ahead. You did something stupid, but go ahead, do what you're going to do. And then when you're done and you realize it's not going to work, come on back.
Yeah.
Like it's got that kind of vibe.
That is like, what the conversation kind of goes by because he's just like, sure, just whatever you need to do, son.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement of this, of like, you still think that you can escape this when in fact you cannot. And so go ahead if you need to do it, do it.
Right. And then all the ways that he treats Valerie, because it's an escalation of like, really, like it starts off as just him being a shitty dude. And I think that it stems from a sort of like just a general unfamiliarity or almost kind of like a cargo cult way of going about gender roles. Like he just doesn't know how a man behaves. And so he thinks this is how it is.
Well, I would argue that he maybe does know how a man behaves in the 70s. So it's interesting. So this is, I guess maybe we should pause at this point because one of the things I had said to you when we first talked about this was like, we'll have to keep in mind, and everyone should keep this in mind, is that even though we talk about queer people sort of monolithically, that obviously, like any marginalized group, they are not monolithic. And the way that, one part of that group experiences the world, another one is completely different and so on. This is particularly true in the way that it gets represented in movies, especially prior to sort of the new queer film movement. When it's like you have very few actual gay people making movies. So you'll get, this is where you see things like gay men are usually portrayed as sort of weak or sick in some way, or like degenerate. Trans people are mentally ill and dangerous. And also true and important for this movie, lesbians are often portrayed as sort of naive or confused or man-hating. And so one of the ways that this gets translated in, I think probably more the 60s and then into the 70s, for men, it's this idea of like, oh, gay men just hate women, which is obviously not true.
Yeah.
I mean, and the same is like, these are all really awful stereotypes. And that's the problem, is that this movie operates on stereotypes. It doesn't realize it's doing it, but it does it real hard.
It's a movie about gay people written. It's a movie. It's a movie about gay characters written by straight men.
Right.
And that is a humongous fucking flaw. But at the same time, I think that the sort of symbolic, the lesbian nature of these characters is also plays into sort of like the gender dynamics where I think a lot of men are mostly threatened by women who love women because there is no there's no masculine part to
Right.
this. It
So-
feels as though that they are acting completely of their own agency, and that in itself is a massive threat
Right.
to the sort of male hegemony
So
of just the world.
do you want to get into this sort of feminist angle of it now? Because I am by no means an expert on sort of lesbian representation and definitely not on feminism. I know a little bit about it, but I think this requires a lot of context because I think the movie is either trying or thinking that it's taking cues from the radical feminist movement in the late 60s and 70s. It's just doing it in a very confused way.
I'm going to say this. I will give them a little bit of credit on this, and I did this kind of in my sort of that article I wrote about this. They ultimately fail. They fall really, really short of it. However, the others, their contemporaries, were doing it strictly for the male gaze.
This is too.
Sure, there's a ton of fucking just sexy nudity in this
Well,
movie.
I'll tell you why this is doing it that way. So one of the things to understand about radical feminism, this is sort of like second wave feminism in the 70s mostly, and the lesbian separatist movement. One of the sort of fundamental aspects of it was the belief that like a woman could not become a fully realized person as long as she's existing within a patriarchal system. And so like the purpose of that, at least theoretically, was so that like engaging in sort of same-sex relationships and same-sex communal structures is that so women can sort of conceive of themselves beyond the bounds of men's definitions of femininity and womanhood. And so one of the proposed solutions of that from the radical feminist perspective was this idea of separatism in which women do live in same-sex communities, same-sex unions, but it's conceiving of, this is the part that's a little bit hard because it's going to feel really dated. It's conceiving of lesbianism in very different terms than we might today and that we might for any other orientation, in that it's drawing a distinction between sexual orientation, which is women who are sexually attracted to other women, and what they would have referred to as like, I guess political lesbians or like cultural lesbians would be the right term, the appropriate term, I guess, which is like women who don't have a same-sex attraction, but are otherwise embracing a lesbian culture. And so that is, to live, outside of men, I guess, or without men. This is sort of where I think the movie gets confused. And it's certainly where a lot of men got confused in the 70s because the movie views the rejection of men or the rejection of masculinity, which is ultimately where the story is going. It's this idea of turning lesbian as an act of empowerment. And there's a little bit of truth in there probably, but it still conceives of lesbian relationships within a patriarchal system. It cannot imagine a world in which, were it not for the desire to reject men, some of these women wouldn't have been lesbian or gone lesbian.
Yeah, okay, I get you. Yeah, again, gay characters written by heterosexual men.
Right. So you can't imagine a perspective. It's a perspective that can't imagine sort of women whose desires and goals are motivated by anything that's not tangentially related to men in some way. So it's always male-centric. So even in creating these lesbian characters, they're still lesbian characters created for the male gaze. They are hyper-feminine. And that's not to say that, obviously lesbians have portrayed themselves in many different ways and presented themselves in many different ways, and that is one of them. But it still sticks to this idea of naive young women are confused and that they're sort of like this lesbianism is disingenuous or immature in some way. And it portrays the Bathory character as, as much as she's not that stereotypical sort of like butch dyke character, she is still supposed to be, and I think visibly is, an older woman preying on younger women. She's,
I was
she's
going to say,
manipulating.
more broadly speaking, like a corrupting influence.
Yeah. So she doesn't fit the sort of the visual cues. She's not setting off those alarms, but her behavior is very much of an older lesbian woman who is luring these younger women who are confused because of the brutality of men, or, you know, it's a very 40s perspective, I think, too. And so the whole movie operates on these sort of homophobic assumptions. And we will get into it, too, with men as well, because they definitely do it there. It's sort of like watching... Well, while I was watching, I was like, it feels a little bit like when you watch a blaxploitation movie, and you're watching a blaxploitation movie written by white people or directed by white people.
I get that totally. It's supposed to come off as empowering, but it feels like it's pandering.
Right. Whereas you watch something that's made by like what's his name, William Gunn, or Mario Van Peebles. And it's like, oh, this is a very different movie. It's sort of like watching this versus watching like late 80s, early 90s lesbian cinema. You're going to get hugely different things, because this is still a movie that cannot conceive of a world in which women are not sort of subservient to men in some way, and their desire to be with another woman is simply a rejection of men, because they can't imagine a world in which they are not central to a sort of women's experience of everything. So even in rejecting women, it's still about men, which is like, that was not the point of radical feminism. It was not about rejecting men. It was about trying to discover, and I'm speaking very broadly here, but like trying to discover who you are as a woman, as an autonomous, independent person that does not exist in this world that is controlling you based on men's whims and wants. And I think that's the important thing to remember, because it's really going to poke all of those little things where it's just like, you know, it's empowering to become this, and she's rejecting, you know, Stefan. And it's like, yeah, sort of, but that's not what, like, first of all, it's a wild misinterpretation of lesbianism in general, and just sort of same-sex attraction, as though it's like something you can just sort of pick up and adopt and then be like, sure, I don't like men anymore. That's definitely not how it works.
I don't know. I when we get there, I'm going to be interested to see how you feel like the ending sort of kind of goes with that flow, because I kind of feel like the way that the movie ends is.
I think I can see where you're headed. I think it can be interpreted in a lot of ways.
Okay, so we'll get there. We got a ways to go still. So we'll get back to the story here. So they're in bed. She's reading the paper, and again, she's sort of struggling to read it. The front page article is about a series of murdered women in Bruges, which is the sort of central city in Belgium. And he suddenly throws the breakfast tray on the floor and mauls her playfully.
It's very odd.
That's his sort of approach to sex, is always like this kind of like clumsy, animalistic kind of like attack.
Which is why
it's always out of fucking nowhere.
And but it feels like you would need, and I don't know anything about the people who wrote the movie. I mean, it's written by like 3 people, but there's an obvious insight that somebody had, or someone was smart enough to say, if I were a gay man who had put myself in this situation and had no idea what it was like to be with a woman intimately, maybe this is how I would react. Like, that takes a lot of it's a very thoughtful approach to writing, in a way that, like, you either know this because you are this, or you are really thinking hard about this. And I find it hard to believe in this 1971 or whatever, they would have actually given it that much thought.
But it is. I think it's a little bit of serendipity, because I think I think the character of his sort of sexual performance is supposed to be a reflection of his brutality.
Right. But he never really, like, that's my problem with it, is like, they're trying to sell you this character as though he is, you know, harboring some sort of dark, violent fantasies vis-a-vis women. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really get that, other than when he clumsily sort of like aggressively, tries to have sex with her. And that's about it.
Well, in the next scene, we're actually going to see a little bit about that. So in the day, they take a boat trip up the canals and get off near the scene of yet another crime, which piques Stefan's interest.
Hey, listen, Bruges, fucking beautiful. I would love to go there.
I would love to go to Bruges.
I have thought that ever since I saw it. Did you ever see In Bruges?
No, I've never seen that one.
It's a pretty good movie.
Colin Farrell?
Yeah. Pretty good movie and makes the city look beautiful.
Europe, man. I want to go to Europe. One of these days, I'm gonna fucking go there. I want to go to France.
You are but a plane ride away.
I know. I'll never get there though.
You are but a plane ride and $7,000 away.
That's mostly it. Patreon.com/bringmethexpod.
Also, we have t-shirts.
We've got t-shirts. So they run over to the crowd in time to see the body of a woman being removed from the crime scene. And everybody clamors to see, but Stefan is seeming to be obsessed by it.
And there's a kid. So there's like a guy. I think it's the detective, the guy, or the former detective, as we'll learn, who's like telling him what happened. And there is a kid behind him who's like kind of leaping up and down, trying to get a good look. And he has glasses on that are magnifying his eyes. And they make him look like a cartoon bug.
He's like Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
It's all I could see the whole scene. I'm just like this goofy fucking Belgian kid in the background.
Yeah.
God bless you, Belgian kid, if you're listening.
You made the movie. You left an impression. So yeah, he just this man in the crowd talks to Stefan, describing the crime scene. The victim's throat was cut, but not a drop of her blood was found at the scene of the crime.
Oh,
yeah. And when the body comes out, Valerie tries to drag him away from the scene, but he knocks her aside violently. While
he hits her in the face.
Yeah. And then the corpse's arm dangles from under the sheet as they put it in the ambulance. Again, more hands.
And so I guess what I had in my note, I wrote, because I was just like, this whole relationship is fucked up. But are we at a certain point to understand that Elizabeth has somehow like hypnotized him in some way, or is influencing him in some way?
No, I think that what ends up happening here, and this is the first time we see it, but I think really what we are seeing is the beginning of his sort of his excitement, his arousal at the thought of women being harmed or killed.
Okay. I don't know. They don't sell it that well. Because I think he's a character that gets ignored.
It's highly up to interpretation. Like you can make of it what you will. I'm just telling you what I think.
No, I think that is probably that does feel like where they're trying to go with it. I just think they pay so little attention to this character in developing him that it sort of doesn't really come across, because they're like, anyway, back to the lesbians.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, because there's really only one person I'm watching this movie for.
Right. On the way back to Ostend, Valerie tells him that she's afraid of him because of what she just witnessed, and then he was visibly enjoying himself as he watched them bring the body out.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that detective guy riding the bus with him. Only other guy there. Which is another interesting thing. Like, I wonder if it's just a matter of budget, or if it was sort of like just something that was supposed to be kind of symbolic. They are alone through a lot of this movie. Like, they are always the only people in the place, wherever that place happens to be.
I think that's intent. That feels intentional, because it's almost like this movie reminded me a little bit of Messiah of Evil.
Okay, yeah.
Where you're supposed to get that.
Like she seems to be the only person in any given place at any time.
And if there is another person there, they are very explicitly there for a reason.
Yeah.
They're not just an extra somewhere. Like it has that vibe of like they're trying to sell isolation to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Back in the hotel, Ilona tries to leave Elizabeth, who casually knits in the lobby. She callously remarks, again, when Ilona tells her that she's leaving. And they argue a bit. Ilona desperately wants to get away, but Elizabeth insists that she needs her. And just then, Stefan and Valerie return. Meanwhile, in the rain outside, the man that Stefan spoke to at the crime scene lurks outside the hotel. And it's like a beautiful, beautiful, like nighttime shots of like dark and stormy. It's a hell of a shot of that guy.
Tell you, whoever photographed this movie, it is stunning.
There's some more shots coming up that are unbelievably beautiful. Elizabeth insists that the couple join her in the lounge for drinks. As they go to return to their rooms, Pierre tries to tell them that Bathory is the same woman who visited the hotel 40 years ago, and they understandably react like he's nuts.
Yeah, my note says, God damn it, you idiots, he's trying to warn you.
He's Crazy Ralph in this movie.
He really is.
So now the three of them have a drink as Elizabeth endears herself to them.
Yeah, she says, how old do you think I am? And he says, 30, and I said, 30's being a little generous.
She was 39 when they made this movie.
Yeah. She does not look 30, because that's a 1971 39.
Also, that cocktail she's got looks so fucking gross.
It's like a creme de menthe, like with milk or some shit. It looks fucking disgusting.
In one of the supplementals on the Blu-ray, they what is it? Kumel says that it was lots and lots of cornstarch to like deliberately thicken it.
It's so gross.
It's this like light green, like lime green drink in this sort of like a martini glass that whenever she moves around, it doesn't really move as much as you expect a liquid to.
No, it looks like the inside of an Andes mint. But with like a coffee bean on the top.
It definitely looks like a cocktail you get in a European hotel in 1971. I can't really think of how else to describe it.
Yeah, where like everything else on the table has like Jello with like fruit and vegetables in it for some reason.
It's got ham in it for some reason.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's this whenever Bathory is in the scene, it's mostly just her talking and like gushing about everybody, oversharing, saying a lot of stuff she probably shouldn't say to people that she just met. And
she has, in this scene, she has on this dress that makes it look as though she's sort of like drenched in blood. It's this like red dress that sort of flows down over her in a very
because
it's a beautiful way.
Yeah. Anyways, also Ilona comes along and she catches Stefan's eye, which is kind of the point. And so as they're talking, she's like, "Oh, you must have loved Bruges," which makes them suspicious. But she turns over the paper to Stefan, sees himself photographed at the crime scene on the front page.
What are the odds?
Just really, really into a dead woman.
Yeah. This is you after you punched your wife in the face. Laid her out on a police car.
Conversation turns to how each of them seems to be asking Pierre the porter about the others when in walks the guy from the crime scene in Bruges. He's just coming in from the rain, and it would seem that Ilona took his newspaper to give to Elizabeth. Somehow she knows that he's a cop from London.
Also, where would she get his newspaper? Why is he even there?
He was out in a storm, and it is bone dry.
Yeah.
So he positions himself behind her on the couch as she inspects her makeup in a compact mirror. The only thing reflected, again, is her hand.
It's sort of like, it does remind me of the way in which vampires are represented in, not quite to the same extent, but in Ganja and Hess, where it's like they're kind of more a metaphor than anything else. Like we never really lean in too much. This movie really kind of does at certain points, but then at other times it's like, vampire schmampire. She's just a bitchy old lady.
She's a wonderful old lady, though.
Yeah, she is. I'd hang out with her every day.
Oh my God. If she would just sit there and fucking talk to me with that kind of smoky voice, oh my God, I'd just be in rapture. She'd just drink all my blood. I don't care.
And then, but she'd be like, "Okay, look, you keep insisting I wear that ridiculously tight silver dress." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I know. I need you to wear that."
Yep. So this detective, he announces that he's retired now and that investigating these murders is a sort of hobby for him, but that these murders in Bruges are special. They're like ancient folklore about ghouls and vampires. When Elizabeth catches his meaning, she dismisses him and he leaves.
And every person in this movie feels sinister.
Oh yeah, like everybody's got like ulterior motives, no matter who they are.
With the exception of Pierre. Pierre comes across like a little bit like a more neurotic. You ever see Mystery Train?
Yeah.
He's sort of like a more neurotic Screaming Jay Hawkins. Screaming Jay Hawkins works there, and he just doesn't give a shit about anybody.
Yeah. You know who definitely doesn't have ulterior motives in this movie? The kid with the glasses.
No, he's just excited to be there. I get it.
Yep. So now there's some flirtation between Stefan and Ilona when Elizabeth extols the virtues of drinking blood among the elites, specifically the Bathories. Now, Elizabeth claims to be the descendant of the Scarlet Countess, the original Elizabeth Bathory, who, if you're listening to this, you know who Bathory is. And
this scene is fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, she killed as many as 800 peasant virgins to like drink their blood and bathe in it and shit. Stefan is familiar with her, and he actually knows quite a bit, and then he recounts the horrible history of Elizabeth Bathory, who not only killed her victims, but tortured them. Elizabeth is taken up behind his chair as he talks, The two of them are driven deeper into like a sort of frenzy of arousal as Valerie is driven to disgust.
It's like a weird psychosexual kind of fugue thing that they're doing, where they're both just sort of like checked out and talking to no one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like he's getting carried away, like he's turned on by these stories of women being tortured and murdered.
And of course, Valerie is getting visibly upset more and more so as they keep talking. Like she's sort of rising to a panic.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic moment. There's this movie in a lot of ways just sort of trundles along, but every now and then there are these moments that sort of swell up. You're like, oh, God damn. Yeah. Whose idea was this?
This is such a great scene. Because like Elizabeth is like above him and she's got her arms around him and she's like kind of like nuzzling him as he's like talking this way and like getting really kind of carried away and like horny over these horrible stories. So again, like this is kind of ties back to what we were talking about when they go and they see the body. It's him being into like women who are being harmed or kill. Like that's his kink. So now Valerie storms off, leaving the two of them to finish the story.
Well, because she sort of shatters that frenzy when she like stands up and screams at them to stop, and then she storms out, and like that breaks the whatever spell is happening.
Yeah. So in her room, Valerie draws a bath while Ilona lurks on the balcony. And when Valerie finds her, she screams, which draws Stefan to her room.
Because Ilona is on the balcony and Valerie kind of like hears the noise. And I kept finding I don't know if this was intentional or just me reading it in this way, but like I kept finding the pull or the handle on the window is very phallic looking.
Yes, because it's whenever they're in that room, there's always somebody up against it and their hand is on it.
Yes.
Or it's near it.
And she's just sort of like touching it lightly. And so she like grabs the thing, she pulls it open, and there's Ilona in this sort of weird,
there is a name for this pose.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Because you've seen it in paintings, you've seen it in like, I don't know about like, performance in like dance and something like that, but the way it's probably in your TikTok is where I know it from. And she's also completely nude.
Yeah,
and she just kind of has this like caught in the act look on her face.
Right, because the light flashes bizarre on her, and she's almost like like that's
really.
Like, that's how they catch her.
I know we don't have video episodes, but please put that on. Please put that on.
I'm going to put that on the Instagram so you can see what I mean by that sound effect.
It's great.
Right. So yeah, it draws Stefan to her room. Elizabeth returns to her room to find Ilona retching over the toilet. She says, "You couldn't wait, could you?" She asks her, implying that she was about to kill Valerie.
Yeah.
So now Valerie demands that Elizabeth leave them alone. Elizabeth can hardly contain her amusement at her terror.
Yeah, she does have this very like, oh, silly girl.
It's her doing that thing that she did when she was talking to Pierre, who can't believe that this person.
Oh, and she will do it a couple more times too.
Yeah, it's again like her mouth twitches in a way that's her like trying to press this smile down.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool technique.
It's almost like the movie doesn't deserve someone this good. We do not deserve someone this good.
If it were anybody else, we would not be talking about this movie.
No.
Because she is the flagship character in the whole thing.
No, you'd be like, never seen it. The soundtrack's fantastic, though.
Yeah. When things have calmed, the topic of conversation turns back to Mother. When will Stefan be leaving? Valerie wants to leave with him, to which he is again dismissive, but he does finally relent. They have sex again, or start to at least. It's like on the train, but when Valerie gets on top, he turns away and curls up into a ball. And Elizabeth and Ilona watch from the balcony, like you do.
Like predatory lesbians.
they're like the sickos in the sicko meme.
Yes.
So in the morning, Stefan calls Mother, who lives in a terrible estate in the middle of a barren wasteland. Mother takes the call in this crazy fucking greenhouse that is just like overgrown with foliage, lying in a hammock.
It is. What did you watch that? It was on the show on Netflix with Catherine Keener. It was very, very weird. Something about Cherry.
Oh yes, yeah. That show was great. Yes, and I do. I remember the woman who sort of does all of her business in the greenhouse.
Yeah, Catherine Keener. That's what it sort of reminds me of. It's like it's just this weird, overgrown greenhouse that's like, why do I feel like there's 6 to 7 peacocks wandering around here that haven't been fed in years?
Yeah. When Mother is revealed, she's revealed to be a man, like we said. Stefan stammers and evades explaining what he's been up to, but eventually comes around to explaining that he got married to a woman. She berates him in a sort of passive-aggressive way. I say she, but the implication seems to be that Stefan's destiny lies in whatever is going on at Chiltern Manor, and that marrying a woman is a futile attempt to circumvent the inevitable, as we were saying earlier.
It's a very theatrical way of being like, girl, you can't run away, but I understand you're going to have to, but eventually you're just going to come back here. Like, it's phrased in these sort of romantic and very theatrical phrasing, but it's really, I think, just a way of being like, all right, get out there and do what you got to do. Yeah. But, in the end, you're going
to go get this women thing out of your system.
Yeah, you're going to come back. And this is another kind of trope where it implies that Stefan is sort of weak, and maybe like it connects his sexuality with a weird sort of weakness. And I mean, weak of sort of like constitution.
That plays into my sort of analysis of the character of his performance, because he's always like overdoing it.
Well, that's the thing. And like, that's why I think they're leaning into so as much as they may have thought they were doing feminism in this, I think they're also at the same time leaning into a lot of really harmful tropes about gay men, in that they hate women, in that they are, they're weak, or they're sort of like sick in a way that allows him to sort of be kind of taken over a little bit by Elizabeth and tranced by Elizabeth or by Ilona, as is going to happen next. Like, there's this idea that like he can't control himself. He's not a man. He's not masculine. Like, it's again, that weird gender stuff that seems really muddy and murky, and it doesn't make sense why it's even there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
to say
a very fair assessment.
Gay men are sick and weak.
It's very 1971. Like they think they're doing well, but like they're actually undermining their own argument. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like because I can't imagine another reason why this is even in here. It doesn't need to be.
Well, because this is
you could just make him a killer.
This is the tipping point of the movie. This is this kind of moment where he's sort of emasculated. This is the thing he's been sort of avoiding because he knows it's coming. Right. And so from here on out, he's going to sort of go from just like annoying, shitty guy to full-on abuser. Right.
This is the 1971 version of Dressed to Kill.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that.
This idea, it's this idea that straight men have of like, oh, well, he's being emasculated. Like, listen up, everybody. Gay men don't feel emasculated. It's the opposite of that. Like, it's this idea like, oh, they're so feminine. Like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, oh, they must be this way because I'm not that and I don't. Like, it's this weird, again, it's that centering straight men in their whole worldview. They can't imagine of anything that is not them or related to them in some way. And so it conceives of gay men as this like weird, sick, crazy murderer. Or just like in Dressed to Kill, it's like, well, this can't possibly, like, why else would you want to be a woman other than you're a crazy murderer?
Right.
Yeah, so it's very strange. Like, it doesn't serve the story in any way. You could take it out and it would be the same fucking story.
It does in the sense that it is pure exploitation.
Yes, but this movie is trying to present itself as though it is not just a grindhouse movie.
Right.
When in fact it is. It's just Le Grindhouse.
Yeah. So now, as the storm falls on Ostend, Stefan is overcome with anger, and he beats Valerie with a belt.
It is a rough moment, because it comes out of nowhere.
Right. It's shot from outside of the hotel window, which is definitely a choice.
Again, the guy who did the cinematographer for this is very talented. And he did, I looked up his IMDb. I don't know what else to do. He didn't really do much. Like, he worked on like Gettysburg. Remember that piece of shit?
Nope.
A Time to Die. Like, just nothing significant, but like, he's quite good in this.
Yeah. So in the morning, Valerie awakes, covered in welts and curled into a ball on the bed.
And he still has the belt wrapped around his hand. It's very disturbing.
It is upsetting because he's the way that he's holding it is almost, it almost looks like he's sucking his thumb.
Okay.
Know? So yeah, she packs her things quietly, tries to leave. Elizabeth sees her sneaking off and commands Ilona to do as I told you. So now Elizabeth chases after her, running into the detective again in the lobby. She dodges him.
She's like, look, I don't have fucking time for this, man.
So I gotta catch this woman, then I'm gonna corrupt and turn lesbian.
And he's sort of like, oh, okay.
So yeah, she catches up to her at the train station, repeatedly pulling her away from the train, trying to stop her from boarding, and persuades her to return to the hotel with her.
It is like wild gaslighting, though. It's very much like, no. You can't give up now. What do you mean?
Right.
This
she's
isn't
like,
bad.
Yeah, do you not love him? But then, like the next scene, she's like, you gotta ditch this guy because he's no good for you. It's like, well, what were you talking about at the train station?
And it's that idea that like, here's this older woman who's very manipulative, like, because she's never really, at the very end, she is sort of presented as dangerous.
Yeah.
But up until then, she's just this kind of manipulative, predatory woman.
Yeah. She just circles them, like a fucking shark. So now while they're gone, Ilona sneaks into Stefan's room and surprises him. She's there to seduce him, and it works. They have sex, but again, Ilona takes the dominant position, and he does that thing where he like reaches up, like he's gonna grab her boobs, and she crosses her arms over him. And then, like, lies
in a way
back.
that is very noticeable. Like, you are supposed to pick up on that.
Yeah. And so Elizabeth and Valerie talk about Stefan, but it's mostly about Stefan and how he's just a piece of shit that's looking to own her. Elizabeth supports Valerie's decision to leave, arguing that he'll only ever see her as an inferior. Valerie is afraid of him. And
she's like, I want you to leave. I just didn't want you to get on that train.
I know. As they're talking, so this is another one of those fucking amazing shots. This is when they're walking up that long sort of hallway where the moonlight is coming in through through the columns.
Yeah, it's like the scene in Pieces with the kung fu. It's that kind of like
yes.
They're outside. I don't know what you call that, like architecturally.
I have no idea. Far more artful than Pieces. I would say.
I would argue otherwise. My kung fu professor.
Again, as Ilona and Stefan are having sex, lots and lots and lots of close-ups of hands.
Yeah. Well, because it's always grabbing. It's never gentle or anything. It's like aggressive grabbing and holding and owning.
That's what it is. It is you take with your hands, you manipulate with your hands, you do with your hands. Jodorowsky does that a lot in Santa Sangre. Hands are really important to that. Hands.
Well, because the hands. I mean, every character in Santa Sangre does something important with their hands.
Yeah. Nicholas Winding Refn also does the same thing in Only God Forgives. Like, hands are constantly in close up.
Never seen it. Great soundtrack though. Cliff Mansell.
I like that movie quite a bit.
Former Red Hot Chili Pepper Cliff Mansell.
Was he in the Chili Peppers?
He was their original drummer.
Shut up. I had no idea. All right. But yeah, hands. It's all up in here. So yeah, like right up to the last moment with Stefan, hands are super fucking important. But yeah,
and her argument too, I would also say her argument is this. It's that same kind of classic. Your husband is a man, and this is all men want, to objectify and control you. But I can free you if you just give in and become a lesbian. It's that kind of thing.
And the movie's conclusion is that Valerie's fate isn't much different with Elizabeth than it would be with.
Right, and it's
Stefan.
all contingent upon Stefan, upon rejecting Stefan. So again, it can't conceive of a woman making a choice that is not somehow connected to a man.
Yeah.
And that's like, and the only reason Elizabeth is able to sort of take control in this way is because Valerie is young and naive and sort of weak-minded.
Yeah. because
now confused.
She's not, because Valerie is not portrayed as like stupid.
She's very naive and sort of like romantic and sentimental.
That's what's going on here. So yeah, back at the hotel, Ilona hungrily watches Stefan's neck while he takes a shower.
This scene is fucking rough.
It is really awful because, again, shot in extreme close-ups.
Mm-hmm.
He playfully tries to drag her under the water, and she fights him, struggling to get away.
Which is another, like, this is one of the few times where they're like, oh, hey, remember vampires?
Yeah.
They're in this movie. And remember this very underutilized and almost forgotten aspect of vampire lore?
I know, like, I'm surprised nobody threw a handful of rice on the floor or something like that. Like, this is a real deep cut in terms of vampire lore, is running water.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she fights him, struggling to get away. She ends up slipping and falling against the sink, grabbing the razor by the blade.
But she's also like crashing through the bathroom. Like, it's a very tight space. It's a little bit like the train car. Very tight space. So they are right up on her and she is knocking shit off. Of course, it's the 70s, so everything's made of glass. And it's all tumbling to the floor. It's exploding and like the glass is shattering.
Oh, yeah. Floor to ceiling frosted glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it is a violent moment. Even though it's just her sort of whirling around the room, forever whirling. That is a very subtle one.
So yeah, and then she slips again and falls on the razor, which runs her through. Not really how those
first
how those
she
things
grabs
work, but,
the razor with her hand.
Yeah, which, I felt that.
And they just keep cutting back to her hand, and it's just like gushing blood as she's like gripping the razor.
Yeah. And then the thing, like, it runs up through her and she dies on the floor as Stefan sort of watches impotently.
And it's interesting because it's one of those times when you know, you don't see it happening, but you just sort of like, you instinctively know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So with perfect timing, Valerie enters with Elizabeth. Valerie turns to get help, but Elizabeth stops her and kisses her, leaving a tiny drop of blood on her lips. Suggests that they get rid of her.
Yeah, because there's no way anyone would believe that this was an accident. Look, listen, everybody, if you accidentally kill somebody and somebody says to you, there's no way they're going to believe it was an accident, don't listen to them. We all saw what happened in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Or at the very least, you listen to us make fun of that movie. Yep. They're trying to rope you into some horrible scheme in which you will be murdered.
Yep. Everybody ends up dead in the end. Except one girl.
Yeah. So that's my second PSA. First one, don't go to Thanksgiving if your family sucks. Second one, if you accidentally kill someone, you gotta own up to it.
Yep. Third one, never go to a second location.
That's always true. We all know that by now.
So yeah. So now Stefan retires to the bed catatonic while the women clean up the scene. Ladies got to do everything around here.
Mm-hmm.
And then they drive Ilona's body out to the beach, and they watch as Stefan digs a hole with his bare hands.
What?
To bury.
I was just like, is he doing this with his hands? Because listen, digging a hole is real hard to begin with. Doing it with your hands in wet sand cannot be any easier.
Nope.
Meanwhile, Elizabeth looks on wearing the most outstanding leather cape I've ever seen.
Oh my God. Because what ends up, so he does this work, and then they kind of crest the ridge to look out at the water. And Valerie is standing there, and Elizabeth is next to her, and she raises this cape.
It's cheesy as hell, and I love it.
I love it to death. It is like a bat wing.
Yeah.
That sort of surrounds
it's Countess Dracula through and through.
Oh, it's so great. It's such a fucking great cape.
And it just looks incredible on it. This woman could wear anything, and it would look amazing.
I know. Holy shit. So Elizabeth becomes.
I mean, she can't. Unfortunately, she is dead. She can't wear anything now. Or at the very least, she's been wearing the same thing. So.
So Elizabeth becomes worried about the impending sunrise. She kicks Ilona's body into the hole.
This is when she says this. I think this might be the greatest line in the movie. When she says, "Deep in my bones, I feel it. The night is dying."
Oh God, what a line!
And it's so awesome. It's like, I bet it sounds just as fucking cool in Flemish.
Yeah. So they kick the body into the hole while Stefan is still in it, and he just kind of like falls under her. And
It's
then
really hard because she's just like, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
the sun's about to rise, motherfuckers. By the way, I'm a vampire. In case you hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah, Pierre said it 900 times already, but you idiots haven't been listening.
Should have listened. No, ain't nobody listening to Pierre.
Because we're definitely, there's no coming back from this.
Yeah. On a nearby cliff, the detective is watching them.
And this is when the sand, so they throw the body in. I think he's like starting to get out of the hole.
He's trying to
but she,
climb out, and so she kicks the body on, which
and then all the
causes him to
sand
fall
just-
in,
yeah.
and then all of the sand starts to collapse in around him. It's suffocating as hell.
And so Valerie, he ends up like kind of punching his hand through the sand, and Valerie grabs his hand, and Elizabeth grabs Valerie as though to drag her away from him, but they both sort of end up pulling him out. But it's like clear that she's trying to hopefully just like let him be killed in this hole. Doesn't work out that way, but
no. So Elizabeth drives him back to the hotel. Seeing the detective riding his bike, she accelerates and hits him.
and Lord does he tumble.
That's the last we're gonna see of him.
And it doesn't look like she killed him. So
No,
again,
he
it's like,
just kind of like gently crashes.
yeah, it's sort of just, it's like, remember that the early internet meme, Scarlet takes a tumble?
No.
It's
the
cruel.
lady who falls off the winery thing.
Yeah, it's cruel, so you shouldn't watch it, but it's a little bit like that, where he just sort of like gently falls, or like when Kelsey Grammer falls off the stage at Disney World. It's a little bit like that, where you're like, well, he's not dead. He can still solve the crime.
Yep. So,
Well, that's a feature wrap on whatever that fucking guy's name was. I don't even think we ever learn his name.
No, I don't think he ever says his name. When they get back to the hotel, the couple separates at the doors to their room. Valerie slips into Elizabeth's room, shaking off Stefan's attempt to pull her back into their room. And then as the shot fades to red, Elizabeth and Valerie have sex, or at least it's implied that they do, while Stefan tosses and turns in his bed.
And this is when we see sort of, as Elizabeth sort of takes her over, we see Valerie sort of drenched in this red light.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to see at this time, to see the way that the French, Spanish, and Italians were all sort of influencing one another, and how that very slowly made its way to the US, but you can really see it sort of contemporaneously in those movements.
Yeah.
Because they're really on each other.
Yeah, this one in particular, I wonder, because this scene specifically, I wonder if Tony Scott ever saw this movie, because a lot of this, particularly like the Valerie Elizabeth dynamic, reminds me of The Hunger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So the next morning, Elizabeth dresses Valerie and has her fetch Stefan, inspecting her neck and asking if it hurts. We don't see any kind of wound.
This is when she's in that fucking dress.
Yeah. And
just in the morning, she's just like, oh, let me put on something. This is my brunch outfit. And it is like this skin-tight silver lame, or not lame. It's like,
they're like, what do you call those things?
It's like this, the pillow, the pillow that the cats hate.
What?
Have you ever seen those internet videos? Why am I the one explaining internet videos? I don't know a fucking thing about this. But like the ones where like you rub them one way and then like you rub it another way and it like sort of changes.
Sequence.
Yes. But that's not what I was thinking of. But yes, okay. They are sequence.
That's sequence.
It is a sequence dress.
Yeah. It then once we, like, again, we don't see a wound. It's all just implied. And then as Valerie leaves, Elizabeth turns to the sort of like the doorway to, I guess, the bathroom or something, and she assumes this like campy pose.
Oh yeah, no, it is like full on. Jesus, what's her name? She was in Gilda. Rita Hayworth.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
It's very like playful, but in a way, it's vamping.
Yes.
Is what she's doing, but she also, this is after she puts that kind of collar on Valerie.
The collar happens soon,
or is that
in the next scene? Yeah,
yeah, but she's doing like, it's very what's the von Sternberg thing? It's it's very like I don't even know what you'd call it. This is where we're right on the sort of precipice of camp, where they're like, he's leaning in a little close. They're not going to tip over the edge, but she knows exactly what she's doing.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, all right, I'm going to just shout out what I want you to do. And she was like, no, don't worry. I know what to do.
I got this. You think I'm a fucking amateur here?
Yeah.
So in their room,
I'm going to save your movie. Don't worry about it.
In their room, Stefan is packing to leave. He insists that they're both going, but Valerie tells him that the Countess is waiting. She's a bit like a robot now, but it falls away as they
very
talk.
Stepford wife at this point.
Mm-hmm. He begs her to leave with him, afraid of what the Countess is. And then Elizabeth enters dramatically through the balcony door in that amazing dress.
Yeah. And my note literally says, look at that fucking dress. God damn it.
It is crazy. Look up this dress right now. Silver dress, Daughters of Darkness.
Just look up every fucking thing this woman wears in this movie. This is literally the only reason to watch it is like everything she wears.
So Stefan tries to exercise some dominance over Valerie, but there's nothing behind it anymore.
And there's also this like, this is really where she's, again, more sort of that gaslighting thing where she's basically just like, what am I? Am I a vampire? Is that what you're going to say?
Oh, right. Yeah. Because also this is the part where she says, you sound like you hate me. I want you to love me. I want everyone to love me.
Yeah, easy, Donald Trump.
And then she leads Valerie out of the room by the hand.
And this is when he tries to grab her and he says, I am a man and she is mine.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I guess here's my problem with this is that I understand internalized homophobia. I understand self-hatred. I understand these delusions extremely well. I cannot imagine, and I think this is probably where it's that straight male writing of a gay character, where he's just so desperate to do this. And it's like, even a gay man would never say that, because it's like, that's something a straight man would say. That's something that someone believes it. He knows he doesn't believe it. That's the problem with the character, is that he's desperately trying to be this way, and it's not working.
Yeah, so this is I do think this is a bit of a bit of clumsiness. In my sort of broader kind of thesis on this is not his character speaking. This is men, in general speaking,
and it doesn't work because they haven't done. It's this character is so underdeveloped.
Right, what's happening here?
Yes,
and this is clashing with the other direction that they're.
And
it
feels like his queerness is an afterthought that they just sort of threw in to be like, oh, won't this be interesting too? And like, well, no, it's just confusing actually. Yeah. If you had just let him be a sort of brutish man, it would have worked. And I wonder too, because originally Kumel had wanted Malcolm McDowell for this role.
Right.
And I wonder if by adding John Carlin, they maybe threw this in, because I would buy, especially after Clockwork Orange. This is after Clockwork Orange, right?
I think so. I think Clockwork Orange is 1970.
It would have been right after. And so I would buy Malcolm McDowell in this sort of brutish, almost like Stanley Kowalski kind of like domineering man. Even though he doesn't have the physicality, he still has a presence that I think is very much evident in Clockwork Orange.
Gotcha.
And I wonder if by adding John Carlin, they're like, well, he doesn't have the same presence. He's a little softer. He's a little more demure. Yeah. What if we toss this in to kind of explain it? And it's like, it doesn't explain it. If anything, it undermines it in a way that is now confusing and just like, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Also, Clockwork Orange was also 1971.
Okay. So maybe that's why he wasn't available. But I mean, he had been in other shit too before that. So like, I don't know. I don't really know how to reconcile it. It just doesn't work. And it feels so underwritten and underdeveloped that I'm like, I don't know why you keep throwing this curveball in as though it's supposed to explain something other than to say, you obviously don't understand what you're talking about.
You know what it kind of rings to me as like late stage script writing, where the first two acts of the story have been so emphasized,
yeah,
that they kind of got towards the end and they're like, okay, so let's just wrap this up so we can shoot this.
And you also have 3 people. And so like clearly I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess that the first 2 acts of this movie were probably written by 2 people working in concert. Maybe the 3rd act is where one of them, Kumel, kind of jumps in and is like, oh, I'm going to get my writing credit and we're going to solve some problems that I think are problems. And like,
Sure.
It just feels like, too many cooks.
Yep.
Takes a lot to make a stew, you might say. And you're welcome, everybody. That's going to be stuck in your head. If you know, you know.
Too many cooks. At dinner, she wraps a strange necklace around Valerie's neck as they talk, almost like a collar.
Yeah. And I think that's very intentional. It's also a very smart, very subtle thing to make her like more like a pet. Because at this point, she really is Stepford wife. She's barely saying anything. She's not making eye contact. She's very vacant looking. And I don't want to sound shitty, but like this is sort of where I don't even remember her name, the woman playing the character. But
Danielle Lumet.
Yeah, this is her strength. It's like, and this is why I think she might have been a model, is that she conveys vacancy quite well. And I don't mean that as like a shitty dig. I think she does it very well. It's like there's just nothing there anymore.
Yeah. So now Stefan keeps threatening to go to the police. Elizabeth talks around him, asking what he thinks she is, and that whatever that is, she is not.
It's a really cool moment because, again, she's sort of fucking with him.
Yeah. She says she's like an outmoded idea that's also just kind of drifting through France and Belgium. She admits to being in Bruges, which implicates her in the murders around there.
It's very much, it's that idea. It's the gaslighting that she does at the train where she's essentially like, what are you going to do? Tell him I'm a vampire?
Yeah.
And it also kind of brings to mind Herzog's Nosferatu, where it's like, he's just sort of this dying relic that's just kind of floating around and he's pretty unhappy, but...
Yeah, I was trying to think of that when we were talking about how they seem to be alone everywhere they go. Mm-hmm. I was trying to, specifically when they are in Bruges, a lot of the exterior scenes in Herzog's Nosferatu have the same kind of vibe, where it's just this like empty city. Because obviously in that version...
Well, then it's the plague.
In that one, it's the plague has killed literally everybody. But yeah, Valerie now freaks out when Stefan stands up and touches her shoulder. She shrinks back to the protection of Elizabeth, but Elizabeth tells her to go and kiss him and ask him to forgive her.
And this again is that feeling of like predatory lesbianism.
Yeah, yes. Again, but also, yeah, it's like super kinky.
Yeah.
Like this is very like real dom sub stuff. And so she does this, but she turns her head away when he tries to kiss her. So Elizabeth comes over and with her hands turns her head back to him.
I didn't care for that. It's more hands shit because again, it's that idea of what do your hands do? They control, they manipulate.
Yeah. So he kisses her with the same ferocious desperation as the beginning of the movie. Valerie shrinks away, accusing of him being incapable of love.
This is when he shouts, "I am a man and she is mine."
Yes. So yeah, he grabs her again, tells her that he's a man, she belongs to me. He tries to drag her out of the room, but she pulls away, falling on the couch. And then Stefan climbs on top of her and starts hitting her. And they struggle. They fall on the floor. And Elizabeth grabs the crystal lid for one of the trays and presses
she's gonna cloche him to death.
Presses it over Stefan's face, smothering him. They apply so much force to hold on that it splits in two and falls to either side of him. The broken edges cut his wrists.
It's
the women.
So weird.
It is very,
this scene
very weird.
Is so, like, why would you grab that?
I don't know.
If only, like, again, there's a weird contrivance. It's like, well, we have to cut his wrists. How are we going to cut his wrists? How about she cloches him to death? And someone in the room says, what does that even mean?
Yep. So the women, being vampires, leap to each wrist and drink his blood as it flows out of him, draining him. And given the fact that
he also is he's sort of in this cruciform position, it's very odd.
Yeah, and so like just given the way that hands are emphasized in this movie, particularly the way that like he uses his hands, it is extremely symbolic that they kill him by draining his blood from the marks on the injuries on his wrists. I just love the way that happens.
I guess I would say and again, this is where the movie gets a little artsy again. I would say also you could view this as weirdly sort of like stigmata injury kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
because in truth, you would not have nailed through someone's hands. You would have nailed it through the wrists.
Right.
And like, there's that. I don't know. It's just weird because it is a very obvious way that the body is posed, that it evokes that sort of crucifix moment. And it's like, I don't really get this. It's weird. It's a weird ending.
Yeah. Yeah. So later they wrap his body in plastic. They casually throw it to the street below to the car.
Really, this is a real thud moment.
And then before loading it into the car, Elizabeth kisses his face. And then they drive him out to the swamp, toss his body in the water, giving him none of the consideration they gave to Alona, and then they drive.
I think it would have been better if he was eaten by an alligator.
Oh,
do they have alligators in Belgium? They should.
I hope so. Then they drive to their destination. Elizabeth over Valerie's shoulder as she drives, beckoning her to go faster. They have to beat the sunrise. Scene is sexy as hell.
I loved it and hated it. Because on one hand, it is so well done where you're like, yes, because she's like whispering in her ear, like faster, faster, faster. It feels, do you remember that Poe single, Hey Pretty?
Yeah.
And there's another version of it where it's her brother reading from the book.
Oh, right.
Dialogue from the book. And it's this idea of like, it's Crash. It's driving fast. It's driving fast as metaphor for sex, essentially.
Yeah.
It's that in this very sexy way, but at the same time, it's like, you're a vampire. You're hundreds of years old at this point. You wouldn't get in the car if you had a half an hour. Like, you would have just waited until later to do this. It's not like you need to check out. There's nobody in the hotel.
I know.
The one person in the hotel is terrified of you. You've killed everybody else.
Yeah. So yeah, they're becoming like really aroused as they drive, and then the sun suddenly breaks over the trees, blinding them. They lose control of the car, which skids wildly off the road until it strikes a tree. And then Elizabeth's body
spectacularly, no less.
Yeah, Elizabeth's body is thrown from the car, impaled on a branch, and then the car catches fire, setting fire to the fallen tree as well, which burns Elizabeth's body.
Because every car in the 1970s was basically just a bomb.
Yep. Yeah.
Just like a can of gasoline on wheels.
Yep. Car just explodes. Valerie is presumed to be inside, but we never see her. Then we get a little title card a few months later. A couple dines alone somewhere in Europe. They're joined by Valerie, who literally comes between them wearing the Countess's bat cape. She chatters at them the same way that Elizabeth chattered at her and Stefan. And as they walk away toward the background, her voice is literally Elizabeth's voice. Fade to red, roll credits.
I don't love the ending. It feels so okay. Well, there is a thing I do love in the ending, and that is when the couple, who again are all like much like her, Valerie throughout most of this movie, or much of this movie, is shot in all white outfits.
Yeah,
obviously white being sort of purity, and the couple, they're in like tennis outfits. And then Valerie sort of runs up on them, and she has the black cape on, and and I'm like, it's a little cheesy. I kind of love it still because I love the cape. I would have preferred. It feels tacked on, this ending, and I would have preferred they leave it, as much as it has a very like the lesbians get it in the end, as is the natural order of things. Like,
so I see things a little differently. What I see here is, she, by destroying both of these sort of draining influences from her life, she sort of becomes the master of herself. But at the same time, the fact that her voice is Elizabeth's kind of throws me.
This is the thing is that she's not really, though. Like, it's almost as though this woman has taken over.
Because I'm not sure if the takeaway is supposed to be that like Elizabeth lives on through her.
Because she literally says the same dialogue.
Yeah. So I have a hard time sort of interpreting the ending, but that's where I kind of landed, is that this cycle begins anew, but now she is fully in control of herself, even though like now she's the sort of corrupter or whatever.
It's a weirdly clumsy ending for as clunky and patriarchal as the movie is. It is sort of deftly handled throughout, and it's a weirdly clunky ending.
Yeah.
In that, it's vague and ambiguous in a
think,
way that doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think you're probably right with that. It's a little tacked on. It's like somebody was like, okay, but what happened to Valerie? And they were like, well,
like you could have just left it with the explosion and assumed that Valerie also died. You just don't see it.
Yeah, because that is definitely kind of in keeping with the way that this movie seems to unravel. In terms of just its storytelling quality. Like it starts out very strong. It's got a really strong middle, and then it kind of decelerates. Even though
it accelerates and decelerates at the same time. It's very much like, oh God, I meant to be in bed a half an hour ago.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up. The lesbians die.
Yeah. Beautiful movie. Really, really good movie to look at. Delphine Seyrig is fucking amazing in it.
Yeah.
This story's a little problably for sure.
It's a tough one. It's really a tough one because there's so much to like about this movie. Like it is beautiful. Her performance is fucking incredible. Score incredible and is used perfectly.
Yeah.
And yet it comes at you with such a fucking cudgel of a story.
Yeah, that's the thing I think that they think that they're operating with a scalpel, but it's really like a hammer and a chisel.
And I on one hand, it's hard to fault. I don't know. It's hard to fault people for that because it's like it was 1971.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
that's the thing is like I kind of give them an A for effort in sort of like what they were kind of angling towards. It's just it's steeped in patriarchy.
Yeah, so I do and I don't though, because they've, on one hand, they are trying to do feminism, but it's like you're doing feminism with the minimal effort. And then at the same time, you're leaning into some of the worst, most harmful homophobic tropes of gay men. And it's like, you're not really trying. You're creating what appears to be feminism when you're really just kind of doing lesbians for the male gaze.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's tough. But it's also tough because it's great performances.
Knowing that Harry Kumel also like hit his actress on set because they were fighting again, guy, it undermines the sort of the major theme here. But dizzying performances, a beautiful aesthetic, a look, great music. I mean, it's just.
It's worth seeing because it is a different presentation of what we're used to. Like you usually get, especially if it's the US, you're going to get some really overt homophobic shit and like kind of misogynistic shit. And this is different. And don't be like lulled in to a sort of false sense of femininity or feminism by this movie. But it is worth looking at for that reason, that it's a very different presentation of something.
Yeah. Like if you've seen other sort of like the classic lesbian vampire stuff, like the Jean Rollin stuff is always really gauzy and weird and sort of like a fever dream.
I fucking hate Jean Rollin movies.
I like
do not work for me.
I like Fascination quite a bit. I like Living Dead Girl quite a bit.
I will admit Fascination is interesting to look at.
Yeah, The Iron Rose is a really interesting one as well, but like most of the time, the problem is he had no money, and the only actresses he could afford were
porn actors,
models and porn actresses, and so he was really kind of hamstrung by the limitations. Hammer was doing this also, but Hammer was really kind of like married to the sort of high gothic.
Oh yeah, Hammer is if Warner Brothers did it now, like it's
Jess Franco is Jess Franco, so
Jess Franco is about as low budget as you're going to get at the time. Nobody spoke the same language.
Yes, but like
literally and figuratively.
True, that whole like fucking Tower of Babel thing that they would do. But yeah, like all of those movies were meant for base arousal, just base titillation. Like, hey, you like naked ladies, don't you?
Yeah.
This one's got a little jazz where the other ones don't.
I wonder if everybody's gonna be a little bit snowed by the Frenchness of it all.
Yeah.
Like, clearly the critics were a little bit like, ooh, a French
ooh la la.
movie. This must be legitimate. It's like, no, it's the same fucking garbage. It's just, it's made by different people.
Yep. Sacre bleu.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. I think it's a great movie. I really do.
I enjoyed it. I liked watching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, it just doesn't really stand up to our sort of our usual scrutiny.
Well, and I think that's why it's worth talking about, because it is deceptive in a lot of ways. If you don't know what you're getting into, you'd be like, oh, well, that's a surprisingly feminist movie. And it really is not. It is a weird subversion of feminism.
No, I think my original article, that thing that I wrote, was really, it wasn't about feminism so much as it was just about the sort of gender dynamics and the kind of struggle of patriarchy to sort of hang on to women kind of in the absence of men is really kind of where I land on that one. But yeah. See it. It's a good movie. Delphine Seyrig. Ooh.
Yeah, fuck yeah. If for no other reason, her and these goddamn outfits.
All right. Yeah. So what are we doing next?
Well, we're going to continue with our French theme. 99-cent rental. 99-cent rental. Next week, kicking off holiday celebrations with a deeply strange French-Canadian kids movie, Christmas Martian. It's not going to make any sense. I watch it. Please watch it. If you can find it, please watch it. It's
Vinegar Syndrome.
Super nuts. Very, very odd movie. And then in 2 weeks, Bring Me the Axe is going to come back with the laziest horror sequel ever made, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. Garbage day indeed.
Barely a sequel, man.
Yep. Half a movie.
Yeah. Oh, shit. I can't wait. Because we did Silent Night, Deadly Night last year. So
we're gonna do half of it again.
Go get a hero about half of it. So yeah, go back and listen to that shit. Be back in a week for the Christmas Martian. So help me God. And 2 weeks, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2.
Yeah.